morning, everybody. We're here to talk about life after Accolades. I'll explain what that means in just a moment. I am going to leave some time at the end for questions from the audience, so please don't be shy when we get to that moment. So as I took the assignment, life after Accolades, Accolades can take a lot of different forms. I think most of us probably think of awards when we think of that word. Everyone up here has at least one significant award in the industry. I also think that what we could broadly call fame or recognizability is another type of accolade. And then I just think success is kind of an accolade the public gives to you, especially long-term success. So before we get into it, I am just going to ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the conversation. So Chad, why don't we start with you?
I'm Chad, owner of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Philadelphia native.
Yeah. Rob Rubba of Oyster in Washington, D.C.
I am Damarr Brown, chef de cuisine at Virtue Restaurant in Chicago.
Ellen Yin, co-owner of High Street Hospitality Group here in Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. All right, let's get into this. I kind of break the conversation up into three parts. I would say pursuing/earning would be one, pursuing/earning accolades, the attaining of it, and then reaping the benefits of it. So my first question is, and I'm going to ask you all to be honest because it's not a popular notion, but from the Oscars to the James Beard Awards to everything in between, it is possible, I believe, to campaign for awards. I've certainly heard chefs over the years sit down with their PR team and say, I want this review from the New York Times, I want to make the 50 best list, and I want this, right? And they put, often there's a timeline. Why don't we, Rob, why don't we start with you? Are awards something that you broadly, let's say, desired, were part of your game plan, were something you'd always wanted? And was there kind of an effort to work toward that as part of the mix of what Oyster is doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. As you can see where I position myself, I love to be the center of attention. So, no.
I have to say, I didn't say this at the beginning, but this is like the most modest group for a panel about accolades. When I saw the name and then I saw the speaker, I was like, okay, we'll give it a whirl. But go ahead.
No, but seriously, when we opened Oyster, the intention wasn't really to focus on those things and get that. The big thing for us was sustainability and focusing on that and building our ethos and rebuilding our team. We were coming right after the pandemic started and just trying to figure those things out. Slowly, we started achieving a lot of accolades because we would put our heads down and worked. Through that, some things do pop up that we're like, why aren't we involved with that? We feel like our ethos align with certain accolades, and it would be really nice just to be recognized for that, to kind of push the narrative forward. But in terms of sitting down and saying, I need 3 stars, I need that, I don't think that's really ever our game plan. Our game plan is to kind of be very true to ourselves and continue with that.
Okay. Damarr, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, I can't really say that I campaigned for any accolades or anything. When we opened Virtue, it's been 5 years now. To be honest, the entire management team has worked together for over a decade. So we were like, we're getting the band back together, right? So we were trying to figure out how to be a restaurant and how to serve the community around us. Of course, I have a publicist that I think pushes my efforts in front of media. And I think it's in the best interest of the restaurant. And Chef Williams, he's putting my name in rooms that I'm not in, my team's names. I'm sure that's helpful, but I can't say that I had a plan or anything and said that I wanted this or that. I think we all want to be recognized for our collective efforts. And it's always a privilege when it happens.
Great, thank you. So let's talk about, obviously it's very nice to be recognized. As they say, it's even nice just to be nominated. But to win an award is great. To get on a television show is great. I'm curious to know about what it means from a bottom line standpoint. I remember I mean, I can almost still hear him saying it, and it just stopped me. But years ago, I interviewed a chef by the name of Rick Moonen, who used to be in New York and then was in Las Vegas, and he appeared on Top Chef Masters. And he told me after he was on that show, his business at his Vegas restaurant went up 300%. And that was staggering to me. You won a big award just last year. You won one of the James Beard Awards. Did you see an instant? I mean, I'm not asking for like numbers or anything like that, but did you see a bump right after that? Was there a different kind of energy in the restaurant coming from guests? Were there a lot more first timers, as far as you could tell?
Yeah, I mean, we woke up the next morning, and we normally book reservations 2 months out, and they'll be kind of Friday, Saturdays are full. The rest were hit or miss. Woke up the next morning, the next 2 months were completely booked. And from that point on, you realize, we're kind of in that realm of busyness, and you got to keep up. And I think that's what was hard for us to wrap our heads around. It kind of doesn't stop. So now we were used to being busy 2-3 days a week. Now it's every day.
And that's momentum has continued through over the last year.
That has continued, and you have to build the team. Expectations grow from the guests. So a lot of people were happy to be there, but also some folks were kind of like, all right, show us why you won. Which wasn't the case before. Before we were kind of the underdog and hometown favorite, and people were kind of ushering us along and pushing us. It became more of, all right, let's see what you got. So it did change some things, but you want to be busy. So nobody's going to say, don't give me the award. I don't want to be busy. That's not true at all.
I meant this as a positive
it's a completely positive thing, but we're also a tiny restaurant. So we don't have room to grow that much. We're 30 odd seats. So it's more just filling it up every night and giving the best you can.
And what was your own personal emotional response to that? People who were like, okay, show me, did you relish the challenge?
100%. Because I think you want that. At the end of the day, it keeps you from being complacent. Because you kind of get stuck not in a rut, but we were open for 7 years. It wasn't a new restaurant. So you're constantly kind of finding new challenges, new ways to push yourself. And that's it. If you want a challenge, now you have the national spotlight and they're saying, let's go, let's see it. So we took it on. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Ellen, what for you, in your career, what's been kind of, would it be fair to say that the longevity that you all have enjoyed at a restaurant like Fork, how does that compare with, whatever, actual accolades you might have gotten in the way of awards and stuff? I feel like if you have real longevity in the business, that's the ultimate accolade. That's my feeling. I mean, people would rather have a restaurant in business than,
longevity is
a mantle full of
goal.
awards. But yeah. How do you contextualize success on that level?
Well, I just wanted to echo what Chad was just saying about the pressure after you get an accolade like this. It almost starts from the time you get a positive review. Once you hit your 4-star review, the pressure of being able to perform and exceed guests' expectations every single time is a huge pressure. And Fork is 26 years old, and back in the day, it was extremely difficult to keep that pace up. And we didn't open our second restaurant until after year 7. And so I would just say that I think that longevity comes from that continual push. And I still feel it. I still want Fork to be out there, but it is hard because new restaurants, new changes in the market of what people want are all things that are not static. And because they're not static, you can never kind of let your foot off the accelerator pedal.
Thank you for that. What about the kind of opportunity and capital, I guess would be a way to put it, that comes with awards? I'm curious to know, after winning something like a James Beard Award, are you all of a sudden, flooded with approaches from literary agent, people who managers, people who maybe want you to look at a new restaurant space in a hotel they're getting ready to open. What's the change in that, if any, that comes in the wake of national recognition? Damarr, why don't we start with you for that?
I think, quite frankly, your DMs blow up. It's a little interesting. And I've been fortunate because I'm kind of insulated with a team of older, more experienced individuals. And of course, I've been approached by people to want to manage me or want to partner on restaurants and things like that. But fortunately, it wasn't knee-jerk decisions going on. And I was able to talk to the team about what makes sense as far as opportunities and things like that. But I think it's a ton, right? It's a ton of people reaching out to you, and it's hard to filter those things because now in the age of the internet, everyone has access to everyone. So yeah.
Rob, could you speak to the same question and along those lines to follow on what Damarr just said? Could you also comment on how you go about what you called it filtering? I would think just responding to a lot of. I have trouble keeping up with all the DMs that come in, and I've never won a major award. But just how do you go about making that recalibration in your life and in the new time demands on just even considering and responding to these things?
Yeah, that's like you said, DMs blow up. You get a lot of pressure from everyone. Luckily, we had hired PR right before the James Beard, and it's probably not Holly's job, but I push everything her way and just deal with it because it takes time from the thing that I believe got us to where we were and get the accolades. And I'd really like to rather be in the kitchen. But another thing to that is they're really like the hell yes or hell no philosophy. It's really has to intrigue me, and I really have to be excited about it to say yes. And if I have to think about it, I just say no, because it becomes very overwhelming how many people grab at you, want you to do things, and sometimes they're not worth your time. It's not worth your money. It's going to affect your team. You're going to put heavy pressure on your team to do an event that they shouldn't have to do. We're a tiny restaurant as well. So I look at it very holistically, like, is this healthy for me? Maybe I could fill my pocket really quick, but in the long run, I'm going to be very broke in my energy and my mentality. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially for smaller restaurants, the pressure to do the next thing and the next big thing it can be overwhelming, but you have to think about what brings longevity, and you look at what Ellen has done. Like that's kind of the goal. Like, you want to be here and you want to have a restaurant that is an institution. If you really love this business and want to do it, you look to restaurants like Fork as like the goalpost. And that just comes from day in, day out, doing the job well while like reinventing, in smart ways and growing. And if you start to do other big things outside, you're the soul of your tiny restaurant. If you leave, it's hard to say what'll happen to it. So it can be a treacherous decision that you have to take seriously.
Ellen, you just mentioned waiting, until 7 years in to even do a second restaurant. I think if there was an ability to do a second restaurant, most people wouldn't have that kind of restraint, or third or fourth. But can you speak to how do you kind of gauge when it's time to take on something new, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's doing something on the altruistic or charitable side? How do you go about weighing things like that for yourself and for your team and your infrastructure?
Well, I'm really bad at saying no. But I think that the second restaurant is the hardest restaurant because you don't have that experience of how to get economies of scale, of how to create that slightly larger team. And I think people sometimes can get overly ambitious about building their team when they build that second restaurant, and then sometimes you're overstaffed and maybe you don't need all those layers of management. But I think that for myself, how do I know when it's the right time? Sometimes an opportunity just happens and you know that it's a great deal. And I'm not saying that I'm about just a great deal, because I wouldn't be in this business if I were just about a great deal. But when that opportunity comes and all the stars are aligned, then maybe it's a good time to take it.
Great. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to add anything to that? No. Okay, great. I'm really curious about, Rob, I'll start with you since you made that comment at the beginning about sarcastically saying you like to be the center of attention. You know, you get to a certain point of prominence. You get to a certain point of, you win something, your name's everywhere. Maybe you do some things that put you in a video context. You become recognizable, maybe in your own city or maybe nationally. I am, again, none of you four strike me as people who necessarily relish that kind of attention or even seek it. That's my impression of the four of you. But what was that like for you? You win that award last year. I remember you were going to come on my show later in the summer, and I came up to you at the after party for the beards, and I said, "Are you too big to be on my show now?" And you were very charming about it. But just is that something you enjoy? Is that part of the job as you see it? Is that something that benefits the restaurant, and therefore you kind of have to roll with it? Just how have you adjusted to that part of your life now?
Yeah, I think it comes with it afterwards. It's not really something I really enjoy, but you do get recognized a lot more, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable when you're just trying to have a chill dinner, and next thing you know, there's 100 plates on the table, and you're figuring out how you're going to eat that, and how much time you have to spend in the gym after that meal, it does help the restaurant. Like, you can see it, and guests come in, they're like looking around. We have a small restaurant with an open kitchen, so they can see if you're there, and I think being present is important. And that's one of the things, to go back to the question before too, is to not remove yourself so much from the restaurant that you're not there. Because I think there's like this trust thing, and guests come in, they want to see the person who made this restaurant, the person that's part of it. And if you're not there, not that the team isn't capable of it. I have a fantastic team that can do it, but I feel like it's just being there and kind of being a part of the soul, as Chad said, is really important. But yeah, there's demands. Like my Instagram, I don't really post a lot of pictures of myself or my family. I keep it very private for that aspect, and just keep it very business driven, just for the sake of that, because I do want that privacy still.
Damarr, I need to ask you the same question. I mean, you went on Top Chef. We knew each other a little before that. And then I loved it because I started seeing people commenting on posts on, not your posts, but posts about the show and stuff. And it seemed like people really responded to you. People were like, "Oh, Damarr's so sweet." And, you were definitely a fan favorite on that season. You're also fairly, I don't know if shy is the right word, but you're not someone I would think ever describe as like a showboater or a major extrovert. But how was that experience for you? Obviously that's a possibility when you go on a TV show like that. But when it became your reality, what was it? Can you talk about what that was like?
I think doing Top Chef was a great learning experience, and I really enjoyed it. But once I did that, it was over, and I kind of moved past it. And there's been this space, I think that was maybe 2 years ago, but I'll be out somewhere and someone looks in my direction, goes, "Oh my God." And I'm like, who's here, right? Because in my mind, it doesn't process that they could be that excited to see me. It's weird because I do, quite frankly, have a lot of social anxieties. And most people are very, very kind. And it does, bring people to the restaurant. People will come in 2 years later and say, I came here because I saw you on Top Chef. So I think it's a huge deal to be there. It is a lot of pressure to present whatever experience they were expecting, right? So a lot of people come in, their energy is up here. And I'm like, whoa, right? But it's a lot of pressure. I do feel privileged that, people really enjoyed whatever it was I displayed. People seem to enjoy the restaurant. It's nice to provide a space of excitement for people. But it's still a situation that I'm challenged in, right? I wake up every day and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna work on this, because I know that even though I know this person wants to talk to me, going to have that conversation, I have to go through all these hoops in my mind to navigate how to deal with that. So it's a constant battle that I think I'm getting better at, but it is still a little weird for sure.
Thanks for being so honest about that. I appreciate it. Ellen?
Can I say something? So I'm not a chef, obviously, so when I go out, it's a huge pressure because you are always the hostess with the mostest, especially since I'm a woman. If I go someplace, I have to be on all the time, and that's a huge burden. And all of us, I think, so many of us in the hospitality industry, we are introverted. We are not necessarily the people who are out there all the time. I mean, people might think I'm extroverted, but I'm actually super introverted. And I do also have social anxiety about being in a room of people, especially my peers, speaking candidly. But it's a lot of pressure to be always on, and people think, oh, you always are in the spotlight. And I'm like, not seeking that. But to be alive for 26 years, it's so easy to get lost in the mix of competition that you almost have to be out there all the time, connecting with people, and not necessarily being in the spotlight, but always being out there connecting.
I'm really I was actually about to, well, let me ask you the question first, because I was going to ask you kind of a question that would have led to that answer, but we've only really gotten to know each other in the last couple of years, but when I see you at events, which is usually how we see each other, I never see you just walking from point A to point B. You're always talking to somebody. I did it to you the other day. You were walking by the outside of the hotel, and I was having a coffee, and I went and intercepted you at the door. I have to think, and having a restaurant for as long as you have in this city, I was just curious how beyond the industry, beyond an area like this, just going about your life in Philadelphia, is that a factor of your life after having a prominent restaurant for this long?
I live in a 85-unit apartment building, and I don't even want to walk out of my apartment without being fully dressed. I mean, if I have to go to Walgreens next door, I feel like I have to be ready to see anybody. And even though I just sometimes, if I'm staying at Wayne's house and I'm coming home in the morning, I feel like I'm doing the walk of shame. I'm like 58 years old doing the walk of shame. I have no makeup on. I'm like half, yeah.
By the same token, though. Walk of shame. That's a good one. Okay, drop that into every answer if you can. Okay, so you when you talk about being naturally introverted, and Damarr, when you say what you said, I don't want to say who it is, but I had a conversation years ago with a chef who was so good at doing public things, and they told me they were shy, and I stopped and said, well, "You're shy." And at some point, it started to occur to me, they say that members of Congress it's a pretty big percentage, like in the double digits, like I think it's like 40% or 30% of their time fundraising for their next campaign, and none of them want to do it. They'd rather be in their office, trying to get things done. But it's just a fact of life. When you mention the possibility of, getting lost in the competition and needing to constantly be pushing, do you just consider this something that one has to get comfortable with, almost in a political way? Not that you're being dishonest or anything like that, but that it's just you need to be out there selling your restaurant directly or indirectly a lot of the time.
Well, I think on day one you start to realize that. When we opened, it wasn't the chef-driven culture that we have, escalated over 25 years. I mean, most restaurants were just restaurants. They were maybe owned by somebody that people would know, but it wasn't really about that. And so from day one, I had to be out there meeting guests, making them feel comfortable, connecting with them and wanting them to come back. And that has been my job since day one.
Chad, I saw you nodding a lot at the beginning and end of that answer. Can you just jump in? What's on your mind?
I guess part of that is the connection. You realize in restaurants, food is, especially for a chef, you come to a realization sooner or later that food is not the number one thing that people are there for. They're there for the connection. So for me, I have to say, like, self-awareness hit me like later in life, so I'm not shy necessarily. Like I go out, I want to go in the dining room and say hi to folks. In the beginning, it wasn't the easiest because I didn't wear a chef jacket, I wore a dish coat. I go to the table and go, hey, how is everything? And they'd hand me their plates. They would think I was the busser, and I'm like, I'm the chef. And they're like, oh, okay, great to see you. So once, they would recognize my face, now it's a little easier to go to the table and make those connections with people, because at the end of the day, you go to a restaurant to feel good. The food's good, amazing, but you want to have that connection with people so they do come back. So for me to be able to go out in the dining room and really talk to 70 people a night who want to be there and want to have a good experiences, I'm thankful for that part of the fame and notoriety.
Thank you for that. Anybody else want in on that?
I think it's interesting because obviously I work with a person with a huge personality, being Chef Williams. And even, over a decade ago when we were at MK, it was a closed kitchen then. But as a sous chef, you were instructed to go talk to people in the dining room, which made me very uncomfortable. But that was the instruction. And even now, when we opened Virtue, you kind of had to touch all these tables. And before I was a little more known, similarly, when I would come to the table, they'd be like, you ain't Eric, who are you, right? Like, why are you addressing us? Which was a little weird. And then even now, right now that I'm more known, people kind of request to speak to me, and I touch the tables. We have a restaurant down the street, Daisy's now, when I get a text from Chef, so-and-so's at the restaurant, go down the street and talk to them. And I'm like, okay. But it is an important part, because I think that in being in the dining room and the kitchen being open and recognizing faces and names, we know that this person likes to sit at table 53 and they like, their San Pellegrino, and they like this and that. And they come back, 3 times a month, and that's a huge deal. So I think that part, however uncomfortable it is very, very important. So
I'm struck how many of you have mentioned being in the restaurants and wanting to be in the restaurants, almost like it takes a concerted effort to do that. I wonder if you all could speak to why that is important to you, because I do think, and I always say this, things change. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I do feel like it's generally now accepted that a chef may not be in their restaurant, or that an owner may not be in their restaurant. That people want to have multiple restaurants. That people are doing charity events, or they're at the so and so food and wine, whatever it is, somewhere. Can you guys, let's just go down the whole line. Chad, let's start with you. What is the importance of that to you, and is it a concerted effort to keep your professional life contained enough that that's doable?
I think so. I mean, for me, I love being in the restaurants. It's like I love the game. This is what I want to do. So I can imagine not being there. And I had really great mentors that I've worked with, and some that I'm lucky enough to have in the city, who have shown you that you can grow in a single restaurant or two, but they're still present. Every time I go to Vetri, Mark shows up, and he's working on a dish, and he's cooking in the kitchen, and it's not forced. It's natural. It's like, okay, you want to do this when you're 40, 50, 60, you can. And this is kind of the path you have to take. You have to be present and really enjoy it and go from there.
Rob?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a passion. It's where I love to be. It's where I'm more comfortable. We have a very open concept, so that's great. Like, you get to see everything. This past year, I've probably pulled away a lot more than I have, and kind of developing that trust and confidence that I can be away is very difficult. Like, I just like to be there and have my hands on everything, and that is a challenge, and it's something I like to remain as present as possible at the restaurant. I think it's healthier for me. I'm more exhausted doing media stuff, and I'll probably need a nap after this. Like, I get juiced. It's like energizing for me to be in the restaurant, and I just really love hanging out with the people I work with. Like, I love that camaraderie. I love joking around with them, and I probably talk to them in service more than they probably want, but I just really enjoy being there and cooking, and I think that's what keeps me going, and maybe why I don't want the next thing right now, why I don't want another restaurant right now, is because I just love that and building that so much. Yeah.
Damarr?
I think I echo a lot of that. Is definitely where I'm more comfortable, where I would like to be. And I think that cooks are very visual, hands-on learners. So there has to be somebody that they're kind of looking at, right? Like there has to be an example. I'm not saying that necessarily has to be the chef forever. There's layers of these things. But if I'm saying the standard is this, then I have to be there performing that and giving that example. So I like working next to the cooks, being in the back of the house. The kitchen is open so I can wave at you from the kitchen. I like that. But it's inherently just where I want to be most days.
Ellen, from your point of view?
Well, I love being in all the restaurants, and I love to see my team members. It's like a family to a certain extent. Not family as in, we're all together all the time, but family as in siblings. So there is a little bit of sibling rivalry. So if I spend too much in one restaurant, I definitely feel like I have to give attention to another team.
Mom loves you more.
But I do feel like the point when another restaurateur told me that, Ellen, you spend way too much time in your restaurant, and if you don't get out of the way, you're never going to have a manager who is going to be able to do anything because you're just there all the time. And I was just listening to Mike and Steve from Cook and Solo talking about something similar where, as you grow more entities, and if you're trying to create a team under you, if you are there all the time, then the team who has been with you will always be like, oh, Ellen said this, so I don't really care what you say. I'm going to just go straight to Ellen. And I think that that's why, in a sense, growing a little bit helps create some sense of separation, actually improve my quality of life in terms of, where I want to be, what I want to do, and the ability to travel and other things without having to shut the whole place down.
Great, thank you. Can I just get a sense, do people have questions? All right, I'm going to ask one last one, and I'll come to you guys. Things move really fast today. The public is very fickle these days. I feel like a lot of restaurants, they have like the first year or two busy all the time. Then it kind of, you start hearing they're only busy, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I'm just wondering, is there a shelf life to the opportunities that come with an award or with something like going on a Top Chef? Like, are there the ones you look back and think, oh, maybe I should have done that because I'm not getting asked to do that anymore? Let's maybe go reverse order on this one. Ellen, what are your thoughts on that?
I was just talking to some members of Sisterly Love Collective, which is one of my pet projects that tries to mentor and grow women businesses. And I'm of the opinion that there is a shelf life, and so you have to take it while you can get it. And I told somebody, you're on the train, just keep going. Don't say no. If it starts to become too overwhelming, obviously we don't want you to lose your sanity and mental health. But I do feel that when you are in the spotlight, you kind of have to ride it because you get those opportunities which may or may not come back.
Damarr?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important and something that's been important at Virtue and that Williams has been really good at. So he opened a restaurant. Obviously, he had a name, very big name in Chicago. People were very excited about that. And they were excited about him. But we had a whole team that we kept developing, right? And then years later, now people are excited about me and still him, right? And we're developing people that we work with where their name will, be the next wave of excitement. And we're constantly trying to build upon what resources do we have and how do we use them wisely. So I think that it's kind of been this time-released situation that, okay, it's been 5 years. You have these reasons to be excited about Virtue and what we're doing with our team. So,
yeah, I think I had a different answer until last night. We had a dinner together with some former Best New Chefs and some current Best New Chefs. And when that new class came out, I was kind of like, all right, well, our thing's over, right? But hanging out with everyone and seeing like how jazzed everybody was to be together and how fun that was, I realized like there's this alumni thing to it, and it's really powerful. And like once you are awarded something like that, it does continue. It is a past thing, and as long as you stay relevant and keep evolving, I think that's good to keep reinventing yourself to stay relevant. But if you just lay on the laurel of the accolade, you may disappear and become the dust in the wind. Yeah.
Chad?
I think at the core of it, it's an opportunity to do more. So now you have this award, you are busy, you are visible. How do you use it? You use it to bring in more talent, maybe take some more risk within the restaurant. And that was big for us. Like the tasting menu format that we have now was kind of born out of the desperation of COVID. We didn't want to do that. We were an a la carte restaurant. We could only fit 8 people in our restaurant a night during COVID. So we had to do a tasting menu to make it work. It pushed us there. Now we have the awards. Just, okay, now we have this other opportunity. What do we do with it within the restaurant? And how far can we push our evolution to stay relevant? Because if you want the 25-year, 30-year career, there has to be some change in those kind of ebbs and flows. So use it, use the blessing while it's there to help you move forward.
Great, thanks. So we have about 7 minutes left. I want to get the 2 hands that went up a minute ago. Who were they? Let's go front row, and then we'll do third. Go ahead.
Can you talk about balancing community while also being in the spotlight, and feel free to define community as you see fit?
So the question is, can you talk about balancing community and being in the spotlight, and define community however you like? And again, we are a little tight on time. So Ellen, why don't you take that one?
I'll just say I think community is the most important thing, because on day one you're trying to build that community, whether it's your neighborhood, your teammates, whatever it is. You're always trying to build the community, and as you know, Alicia, from doing the story on Sisterly Love, building that support network for me, I guess. The opportunities to do more for the community is something that really drives me.
Anyone else have a quick comment? If not, it's okay. No? Good. Okay.
Kelly Harbison with Open Table. On Friday, there was a panel that included a Philadelphia councilwoman, and there was talk that alluded to Michelin potentially coming to Philadelphia. So a question, I guess, for Ellen and Chef Chad. What are your thoughts on that potential? Do you welcome it? Are there concerns? And then maybe for Chef Damarr and Chef Rob, who work in cities that already have Michelin, how do you feel that affects the industry in your cities?
So the question is about the possibility of Michelin coming to Philadelphia, and then how having Michelin in your cities affects things. I don't know that we have time to go around the horn, but Chad, why don't you go on the Philadelphia question?
Please, is that please bring it. Like we would love to have it. I think it gives us another goal in the city, and it would help raise the standard. It's just what it does. It gives young chefs a reason to stay in the city. So I think a lot of talented folks, I'm from here and I've lived here the majority of my life. The best sometimes leave because there is that kind of shooting star they can aim at. And if that is here, you don't have to leave. So I think it would help keep the talent and push us forward.
I just want to add, though, that I agree that I think it would be great for Michelin to come here. My only worry is that I think that the criteria have to be adjusted for a city like Philadelphia, where we have such a diverse community and different types of restaurants that get acclaim. And that definitely defines a certain segment of our dining scene, but it's an area where that segment also does need attention.
I personally think that's a Michelin challenge across the United States and always has been. Just really quick, because there was one hand up that went up that I want to try to squeeze in. Having Michelin in your cities.
Yeah. Being a restaurant that does have a Michelin star, it's good. It does help business. It's really nice. And also there is this thing where folks come with this expectation of what it should be. But I think there's a growing pain to it. You first get a star, they start recognizing restaurants in a city. What happens is a lot of restaurants think they can make this formula to get a star, and you get a lot of cookie cutter programs of, okay, we have to do our menu like this is the service standard we want. And then after a while, it kind of fades away and the personality comes back. So there's always that, I think, growing pain a little bit where it feels kind of boring to eat at for a minute because a lot of folks try to replicate it, but it does increase the standard. And yes, I've had cooks from Philadelphia come to us because they're like, I want to work in a Michelin restaurant, and then they come back to Philadelphia. So I agree, it's definitely good for cultivating and keeping cooks inspired. Yeah.
Really interesting. Damarr, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's a goal marker. I think it attracts talent, and obviously we know that there are groups of people that follow those lists that will come to your restaurant because you're on it. So,
Thank you. You have a question, Anna? Okay, we have 2 minutes. So quick question, quick answer.
Quick, so obviously once you get an accolade, brands come out to you. Is there something you want from a brand? Is there anything that a brand can do that would be really exciting for you guys up there? Is there something that would really help you? Maybe now, maybe in the future?
So obviously, one of the things that comes with the recognition of awards or other things is brands approaching you for partnerships and whatnot. Is there anything that you want to see from people who make an approach along those lines that makes a difference to you, and whether you say yes or no?
A donation to Sisterly Love Collective.
Do you want to give out the website address?
sisterlylovephilly.com.
Yeah, I think it's just supporting the vision. You know, like most chefs and owners have an idea where they want to go. And if the brand aligns with that, it makes sense. If not, you know, you have to be, you know, careful with who you partner with.
Thank you. I'm going to make that the last word. I just want to say on a personal note, Chad and I just met. Rob and I have only known each other about a year, but people I'm very fond of. I've been to everyone's restaurants. I finally got to Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the first time the other night, and it was outstanding.
same,
So-
delicious.
Yeah, you were Saturday, Friday. I hope someone went Sunday. You know, I know there are others, but Fork, Virtue and Daisies, Oyster, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Cannot recommend them highly enough. And please thank these panelists for being here this morning.